This video is brought to you by Portrait Mode. So, we're breaking up or what? I mean, it's just not working out. Honestly, I mean, we've been a good team and we had fun, if you know what I mean, but there's something missing. And I think I also have to tell you something because I've been cheating on you, and I know what you think, and please trust me, it's not you, it's me. I've just changed. But whatever it is, I guess we just have to face it. It's over. The Fujifilm X100V and I have been dating for pretty much exactly 1 year now, and after this short yet very intense relationship with this camera, it's time to say goodbye. But before I will let this one go, in this video I will tell you why I think the Fujifilm X100V might be the camera love of my life and why I'm breaking up with it anyway. And for that, I think it's necessary to tell you a little bit more about me first. I am, or rather was, purely a film photographer. Ever since 2017, I've been shooting exclusively film until I decided to give digital another try in 2022. And my tool of choice to restart this journey in digital photography was the Fuji X100V. And since the Fuji X100V was my first digital camera for photography, after such a long time of only shooting film, I haven't quite figured out all of my wishes and needs for a digital tool back when I first got the camera. And my needs and expectations I had at this point were very much shaped by my background in film, being used to all manual settings, manual focusing, slow workflows, and of course a specific look you achieve when shooting film. The genres I've dabbled in before were mostly street photography, everyday life photography, urban landscapes and a bit of night photography, and the Fuji X100V was meant to fill one rather important gap. Therefore, this review will be rather subjective and pretty much tinted by my background as a film photographer, so please take that into consideration. The dating phase. So, what was my intention of getting the Fuji X100V in the first place? Well, most of you know that film is expensive and I shoot quite a lot of film each year, and with some areas of photography, as for example street photography, you usually end up having quite a lot of wasted frames. So I decided to get a digital camera dedicated to street photography that would save some of my rolls of film that I could later use for other projects. But before settling for a camera, I of course did a lot of online dating, checking out different types of cameras to see if there could be a match. And there were in fact a lot of candidates I flirted with, amongst others the Ricoh GR3 and also the Fuji X Pro line like the X Pro 2 or X Pro 3, but also the digital Leica M system, since I've already been shooting on an analog M for the majority of my street photography, and a couple of other cameras here and there. But since 35mm is my preferred focal length of choice, and since less options are sometimes more, the Fuji X100V crossed my radar rather quickly. After a bit of back and forth and problems to actually find one used or new, since they were pretty much out of stock everywhere, I ended up getting one from my local camera store in early autumn of 2022. The crush. And when the Fuji X100V first arrived, I can tell you that I had a crush pretty much straight away. It's just such an incredibly beautiful camera, and it could keep up with my film cameras when it comes to aesthetics and design. Also, I was astounded by the compact size and slim form factor, making most of my film cameras feel like heavy bricks. If used without the lens hood, this camera is even small enough to fit into the pocket of a jacket. And for somebody who usually carries a camera around all day, I truly enjoyed how lightweight it is without feeling too plasticky or cheap. The build quality is in fact fantastic in my opinion. All the wheels feel clicky and sturdy, the body has some high-end touch to it, and as a film shooter, the manual settings of ISO, shutter speed and aperture were right up my alley and felt like home to me. I also liked that I could hand the Fuji to pretty much everybody and instantly people would just understand how the camera works. With my film cameras, I usually had a lot of explaining to do, and even then I wasn't really sure if people would operate it in the correct way, so it was kind of refreshing to see that the Fuji is pretty much foolproof. Another thing I fell in love with is the lens of this camera. Since I shoot 90% of my street photography with a 35mm lens, the 23mm lens, which is in fact a 35mm full frame equivalent, was in fact perfect for me. No decision fatigue, just one lens for everything, and a very versatile and very sharp one as well. The maximum aperture of f2 was more than enough for my use cases, and the leaf shutter in the lens is of course an incredible bonus I learned to enjoy. Even though my favorite film camera, the Leica M6, is already really quiet, the X100V is in fact silent in comparison to that. Also, having such a close minimum focusing distance that almost felt like having a macro lens is a bonus I wasn't used to with any of my other cameras. And from a film photographer's perspective, of course, Fuji's film simulations are something worth discussing. And I know that this is a rather conflicting theme amongst film shooters. While some film shooters really love the film simulations, some really despise them. For me personally, I can say that I really enjoyed the film simulations, even though I don't particularly think that they always look like film. My perspective is the following. I want to spend as much time shooting and as little time editing my images as possible, and I am already so used to working with scanned images where the color science is pretty much baked in already, so that I'm happy about every solution that gives me great results straight from the get-go without having to invest a lot of time. And here I feel like Fuji delivered. Of course, the film simulations do not behave 100% like film, but they are diverse and characteristic enough to make me love them. I pretty much treated the files from this camera like I treat my film. The RAWs are my negatives that I store away and just dig out in case there's an image I want to get back to, and the JPEGs are like my lab scans that I might tweak a bit here and there, but that I pretty much leave as they are. The breakup. And now you might ask, well, you've mentioned so many positive things about this camera. Why are you breaking up then? Well, and the short answer is because love isn't always enough. You can find out that you love somebody, but it still doesn't work out because you simply have different values in life. And what I actually mean by that when it comes to cameras is that I truly love the Fuji X100V and especially the results I got with it. But as much as I enjoyed the outcome, as little did I actually enjoy the process of getting there. The X100V is mainly an autofocus camera, which has the possibility to shoot with manual focusing as well, which, however, didn't quite feel as manual as I was hoping for. With the manual mode, you have an electronic distance scale, no analog distance scale on the lens, and also no hard focusing stop for the closest and the farthest focusing distance. With the manual lenses I used to shoot on other cameras before, I was used to have hard focusing stops with a focusing tab and an analog distance scale, which made it possible to build muscle memory for focusing. Because of the way Fuji resolved manual focus with this camera, manually focusing with it was really no fun for me at all, which kind of forced me to use the autofocus more often instead. And with the autofocus as well, it's not so much fun for me because I feel like I give a lot of the control to the camera and it almost feels like a machine is taking over the job that I usually enjoy the most when taking photos. Also, the X100V is a rangefinder style camera without being a true rangefinder camera. You have this really intelligent viewfinder with an optical, an electronical, and even a hybrid viewfinder, and even though this is probably the most elaborate and clever viewfinder system I've ever used in a camera, it just didn't work for me personally. By using this camera, it just reassured me that I actually prefer the real rangefinder system that works with the rangefinder patch in the middle, and as much as I tried liking the more modern attempt of the Fuji, it just wasn't for me. I like my viewfinders to be even more minimal and ripped down to its core function, and even getting rid of a lot of the display indicators in the Fuji didn't solve it for me. So the lack of a true rangefinder and a not so manual focusing mode were actually the two deal breakers for me, which I only realized after using this camera for so long how important these two factors are for me. And another little reason that also didn't add up for me was battery life with the Fuji. For somebody coming from film, where you either don't have any batteries at all, or you just have to change it maybe once a year or so, the sheer need to carry around enough batteries for the day and the need to empty your SD cards regularly was and still is pretty annoying to me in the digital workflow. One could say that it doesn't really make a difference with film, since you also have to remember to pack some rolls of film, but in my opinion the difference is that I can pack film instantly, while batteries take time to charge in case I forgot to do so ahead of time. I know that there's no way around carrying batteries and SD cards when shooting digital, but I feel like for me as a film shooter it's kind of extra important to not have to worry about it constantly, and even though it's not a unique problem to the X100V, I feel like its battery life was kind of okay, but not great. For a whole day of shooting I usually brought 3 batteries, and if I shot all day from morning or noon to night, I usually had to use them all. If I only had 2 batteries with me, I would become anxious if this would actually suffice me for the day, which is something I was not really used to. The affair. Before I will share with you which camera it was that I've cheated with on the X100V, there's actually one more thing. Throughout the video I've showed you a couple of example images that I've taken with the X100V, but in case that is still not enough for you, and if you want to see even more example images taken with this camera or basically any other camera, I have just the right platform for you, which is Portrait Mode, who's also the sponsor of this video. Unlike the name might suggest, Portrait Mode is a website for street photographers, where you can upload your photos to showcase your work, build your portfolio, and also connect to other street photographers from all over the world. One big advantage Portrait Mode has over other social media platforms is that it was specifically designed for street photographers, so that it's possible to tag the equipment but also settings used for a photo. You can also browse the site by categories or camera models, so that you can see other people's work from cameras you might be having an eye on. What I particularly like about Portrait Mode is that there are rotating features showcased on the main page, as for example a photo of the day, but also editor's choice selections, which gives your photos the chance of more visibility. If you are on the go and don't want to miss anything, you can make use of the Portrait Mode app for iOS or Android. Also recently, Portrait Mode Pro was introduced, where you have the possibility to get feedback from the community by using so-called feedback tokens, as well as get access to the Portrait Mode Discord server. The regular version of Portrait Mode is completely free to use, so if that's something you are interested in, check out the link in the description box down below. Well then, the affair I've been having, the camera that I've cheated with, and fundamentally also the reason why I'm leaving the Fuji X100V is this year. The Leica M10, my dream digital camera that I've been lusting after ever since actually thinking about getting a digital camera in the first place. Back when I was in the game for a digital camera, I already thought about getting the Leica M10, but I simply couldn't find one within my price range, which is why I decided to settle for the Fuji X100V instead, in hopes that maybe I would be happy with it already, which sadly wasn't the case, which is why now, 1 year later, I'm making the switch. And first up, let me get one thing straight here, because I think the Leica M10 is not the better camera. If we take a look at the specs and at the technical capabilities, the Fuji X100V is simply the better camera because it's more modern, it has more features and so much great technology packed into this small body that a lot of the features the Leica M10 doesn't even have. And that being said, by using these two cameras, I simply found out that the Leica M10 is the better camera for me personally and my needs as a photographer with a background in film photography. The Leica M10 is a real rangefinder camera, it has better manual focusing capabilities, in fact it has only manual focusing capabilities, and incredible battery life where I usually only need one battery for a whole day of shooting, and it also mixes and matches beautifully with my already existing analog M setup. Nonetheless, for me it's really sad to see the X100V go. And let's just put it this way. If I was a sugar mama and if I could afford to have multiple partners around, I would definitely not sell the X100V, but keep it as a more compact, automated digital snapshot camera that I could use every now and then. But since I'm simply not in a position to have a 1,700 euros camera lying around in case I maybe want to shoot it every now and then, well, the only rational thing to go about this is to sell it in order to be able to refund the Leica M10 I already own. Even though the X100V hasn't had so many appearances on my YouTube channel, it was in fact one of my most used cameras for street photography and for personal work in 2023. And the color images you've seen in this video are all from last year, taken during the short time span of around 4 months where I was still allowed to shoot color, while the black and white images are mostly from 2023, in which I'm doing a self-imposed black and white challenge. I personally think that the X100V really shines when it comes to color photography, so me actually shooting black and white for the majority of the time I had it is kind of a bummer and one of the few remorses I have about letting this camera go. But for now I have to say from the bottom of my heart, X100V, bye bye, I love you and I will miss you, but I hope that our paths will maybe cross again. But you should definitely kind of stick around, you know, for more Leica M10 content. Okay, I'm a little bit dizzy. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.